The following program is a production of Pioneer Public Television.
Welcome to Prairie Sportsman. I'm your host, Brett Amundson, and it's Wetlands and Waterfowl Week. Today we'll start in the cattails of a western Minnesota slough in search of diving ducks before heading to Swan Lake, one of Minnesota's most impressive wetland habitats. Then we're bringing you up close and personal with controlled fires. We'll find out why they're vital for our wetlands and grasslands and for the wildlife that lives there.
Funding for this project was provided by the Minnesota Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund, as recommended by the Legislative Citizen Commission on Minnesota Resources, and by American Surplus, Ice Castle Fish House RV, Minnesota's largest manufacturer of premium portable ice fish houses, and a proud supporter of the annual February Ice Castle Classic Fishing Tournament. More information at icecastlefh.com. And by Live Wide Open, a regional movement that encourages people to make a great life for themselves in West Central Minnesota. More at livewideopen.com.
We're here in western Minnesota on the eastern edge of prairie pothole country in the United States, and this area plays a vital role in waterfowl production. I try to spend as many days as possible in the fall chasing ducks, and I couldn't pass up an invite from Tony Crotty of Mid-Migration Outfitters.
So our legal shooting time today is 7:14. It's a half hour before sunrise, which is just a couple of minutes from now. This is usually about prime time for ducks. You'll start to see them buzzing decoys and flying around the sloughs, and hopefully we'll get some action here pretty soon. We probably have, I suppose, around 5-6 dozen decoys set out, mixture of different types of duck species. One of my favorite parts of hunting anything is anytime I get to use my dog. And this is my lab Mika. She's going to be 6 in January. She's been hunting for a long time. She loves the waterfowl hunt. She loves the pheasant hunt. She loves to be in the water, so I guarantee you. Two key components of diver hunting is wind and having a good decoy spread. And one part of a decoy spread for hunting divers is a decoy line. So we're setting out decoys in line with the wind. Basically, you can let the wind push you and just drift with the wind and set decoys as you drift and put them right in a nice line. And when they come into that wind, they'll bend right up that diver line and come straight at you.
Right where the line of decoys is out there, there's a hole just in between us and that line, and that's ideally where we're going to want them to land.
So we've got ducks all over this pond right now, but we've got no wind, or in this case, wind that changed to a wind that wasn't forecasted. It's hard to make the ducks go where you want them to go. So right now they're landing in all other parts of the pond, but where we want them to. The way ducks use wind, they use it, helps them land, helps them take off, helps how they, determines how they fly. So you can use the wind and set up a decoy pattern that funnels the ducks right towards you. When you don't have any wind, they can land pretty much wherever they want to, because they don't need to use the wind quite as much to help them land. But on windier days, they'll land into that wind. So you can put that diver line in your pocket and your decoys right in front of you, and it should funnel them right into you, and they can land into that wind. When you don't have it, they land wherever they want, generally out of range, as we've seen here today. Right down the decoy. Finally got a couple of ducks to work pretty much the way we wanted to. Got a pretty good look at them. One of them came down, so we're going to let Mika do some work. go for a little swim. Meek.
Got their neat ducks.
Another great buff. Woo! Well, we had a nice little flurry of action right there. We had some ducks work the decoys actually pretty nice considering the conditions we've got. Still had a couple of long shots, but one of our favorite ducks, actually we got two of our favorite ducks out there, Drake Buffleheads. They're one of the smallest ducks in North America, and they're one of the prettiest. So we're going to send Meek out there and take a look at these ducks. A bird. Meek. Good girl. Good girl. Good girl. Good girl. Yep. Yep. Hold it. Hold it. Good girl. Good girl. Yeah. Good girl. So, these are called buffleheads, and the drakes get these big white patches on their heads, and then in the right lighting you can see this iridescent, like a green and a purple up on the crown up here and on the front of the face. And they're fast, they're fun little ducks, and they look really, really cool. One thing about shooting these little ducks, especially divers, is they'll come in fast, they'll come in low, and if you're not right on them, they can be really tough to hit. Fortunately, we got one guy in the group that shot a few more divers than other guys. I think he knocked down a few of the birds for us today, but sometimes it's hard to tell who's shooting what.
Oh yeah, when you have a group of guys out, it's hard to tell who's shooting what. But yeah, diving ducks, you got to lead them a little bit and hope one of them BBs hits them.
Yeah, I was hoping. I'm not sure any of mine hit them, but they're fun to try to hit. They're fun to hunt because they are tough to hit, and that's part of the challenge of doing it. Well, we didn't stack up a huge pile or a limit of ducks today, but it isn't always about shooting limits out here, Tony. It's about getting out, having fun, getting to work with the dog a little bit. And, you know, this isn't always the best weather for shooting ducks, but I'll tell you what, it's enjoyable to be out here when it's this nice out, and it was a good day.
Yeah, it was a great day. We got out, seen a beautiful sunrise, shot a few ducks, had some fun.
Maybe next time we'll get a little bit of wind.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Let's try it again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We had a great time in the slough because we saw plenty of ducks. Now, we didn't see that a few years back, but duck numbers have increased because of vast improvements to waterfowl habitat here in the Midwest. Natural resource managers are restoring prairie potholes, large shallow lakes and wetlands that were created by melting glaciers. The largest restored pothole in the country is in Nicollet County, Minnesota. Swan Lake, a 10,000-acre marsh that is popular for ducks because of its habitat. In September, we went out with DNR Area Wildlife Manager Stein Inver to explore this prairie jewel of southern Minnesota.
This system that we have here, the 10,000 acres of the lake itself and the surrounding wetlands, are extremely important to waterfowl, shorebirds, reptiles, amphibians, and they simply can't find habitat anywhere else in the state to suit their needs. Here on Swan Lake, we host a variety of waterfowl, mallards, redheads, canvasbacks, wood ducks, teal, a great many wading birds, the egrets and the great blue herons.
Cattail stands provide cover for pheasants, and Canada geese camp out year-round. So do thousands of muskrats. Water control measures keep the lake shallow, at a maximum of 4 to 5 feet, so vegetation is abundant, attracting insects that are a valuable protein source for migrating birds. To increase duck production, the Minnesota DNR and the local Nicolet Conservation Club maintain hundreds of nesting tubes on the lake. They make up for the lack of nesting cover on the upland that surrounds the lake.
Hen mallards will come in here and lay their eggs in here, and it provides overhead cover so that predators like hawks and owls and eagles can't see them. So they're in relative safety out here, and they can incubate their eggs without being eaten. Once they hatch and the ducklings are in this water, with all the vegetation, there's an abundance of insects for those chicks to feed on.
This mecca, enjoyed by wildlife, hunters, and bird watchers, was saved from extinction a few decades ago. In the early 1900s, Swan Lake was more than twice its present size and a famous market hunting location. Tens of thousands of ducks were harvested and shipped by railroad to Twin Cities and Chicago restaurants. In the 1950s, agriculture changed. Pastures were plowed up for cropland, drain tile and ditches were installed, and almost half of Swan Lake drained away. By the 1970s, locals referred to it as a dead sea with its gray, carp-infested waters. But in 1973, it was designated as a wildlife management lake, and a state grant recommended by the Legislative Commission on Minnesota Resources restored Swan Lake, a 10-year project engineered by Ducks Unlimited.
Shallow lakes are important because they're unique. They provide this shallow water with abundant food for ducks and geese and a host of other species.
I'm Stephanie Felt. I'm the Aquatic Invasive Species Coordinator for Kaneohe County, and we're here today at beautiful Green Lake, which unfortunately is infested with zebra mussels and Eurasian milfoil. Fishermen, recreational boat users, anyone who has watercraft on the lake, the key points to remember are to clean, drain, and dispose. So number one, clean. That means when you pull your watercraft off of the lake, make sure you're looking for weeds, zebra mussels, any kind of vegetation that you can just pull off of the boat, get off of the motor, check your trailer thoroughly, because even a fragment of a plant can start a new infestation. It doesn't need to be the whole plant, just a little piece of it can grow in a new body of water. The dispose part of clean, drain, dispose means dispose of any unwanted bait in the nearest trash. But if you want to keep your bait, you can certainly bring a jug of fresh water with you, dump out all the water from your bait container, and put the fresh water in.
This segment has been brought to you by the Aquatic Invasive Species Task Forces of Big Stone, Candy, Ojai, and Yellow Medicine counties.
Next, we visit with one of Minnesota's pioneers of wetland restoration, Bruce Fresky, manager of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service District Office in Morris. Then we'll learn about the benefits of prescribed burns by visiting one at a waterfowl production area near Morris and another at Minneopa State Park near Mankato.
When we arrived at Fish and Wildlife District headquarters, Bruce Fresky's crew was in the midst of burning 200 acres right out his back door. I know some folks don't always appreciate fires burning on grasslands, so I asked Bruce how he responds to the skeptics.
Looking out over this scorched earth, somebody driving by is going to say, what the heck? What the heck did they do to this beautiful prairie out here? Why do you have a prescribed burn out here?
Right. No, that's a good question. We get that asked a lot. And basically, there's no place in Minnesota that wouldn't be forested if it wasn't for fires. It's the fires that make the grassland and keep it there. And if you, even on this property, if you look at it, there's a lot of places where trees have come up because we couldn't get the fire out there frequently enough or hot enough. So if without fire, you won't have prairie, you won't have grassland.
And all the good grass, all the habitat that you want out here for the wildlife will grow back next year. Some people wonder why you would do it maybe during hunting season when they could be out here hunting, or during the spring when maybe it's a nesting season for upland birds or waterfowl, and they say, well, why the heck are they out there burning at that time? What do you say to those people?
Well, I ask them when they want us to burn, because, I mean, you burn in the spring or you burn in the fall, and when the grass is dry, and it's hard to get it to burn in the middle of summer when everything's green, so that's when you have to burn. But yeah, we get asked that question. You know, if you burn in the spring, you're eliminating nesting cover. If you burn in the fall, you're eliminating wintering cover. And what I tell folks is, first of all, On our areas, we don't do the entire tract, we only do a portion of it, and we don't burn them every year, maybe once every 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, and like you said, you can look out over here and you can still see part of the ground here has still got grass on it, so there's a place for the wildlife to go. And we did actually see a pheasant fly over after the burn went through. A pheasant flew back in.
When this 1,000-acre plot was purchased from a private landowner 40 years ago, there were only a few wetland ponds on the property. Almost all had been drained. Today, there are at least 15 ponds, along with restored prairie that ducks need for nesting, as well as pheasants. To bring the wetlands back, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service looked at the historic aerial photos, surveyed the property, then constructed small dams to hold the water back.
You can look at some of the old aerial photos and get a kind of an idea what it was, but the first aerial photos taken were like in the late 1930s. And there were tens of thousands of wetlands just in this county alone. And in many, many places there was actually more water than land. And some places actually probably weren't optimal nesting for mallards just because there was so much water. And of course now 90-some% of that water is gone. So there's only certain areas where we still have a lot of wetlands. And this area here, and this tract here, we've pretty much put all the wetlands back that were here.
Restoring wetlands for ducks and geese is one of the benefits of prescribed burns. But waterfowl also need grass, and that benefits other wildlife like pheasants, deer, and insects.
Well, and for ducks in particular, a lot of them are ground nesting. There's a few that nest over the water like redheads, but like mallards nest in grass, and our ratio is you really need 4 acres of upland to 1 acre of wetland to have pretty good production. If you have less than that, the predation rates start to get really high.
Let's talk about funding, though, for what you do, because I always like to talk about hunters being the biggest conservationists out there, essentially, and a lot of money that hunters, whether it's buying shells or buying licenses or whatever, buying federal duck stamps is your primary source of funding for lands like this.
Right. Well, pretty much all the duck stamp money has to by law used for land acquisition, so either buying land or buying easements.
The Morris District staff manages 53,000 acres of public land on 248 separate tracts, but it's only a small fraction of the habitat that wildlife enjoyed 150 years ago. Working with private landowners is essential to improving wildlife habitat. Some farmers are doing their own restoration work with help from various conservation easement programs. Bruce says they will work with farmers and provide technical advice and help landowners secure funding. As Bruce and I talked, we recognize that although farmers, hunters, and environmentalists may have different and sometimes opposing viewpoints, one thing we can all agree on is we need clean water. Native grasslands with their deep root system filter water and keep it clear.
Gives it cleaner water, slows it down, and actually a lot of that water, when it's slowed down, actually goes into our groundwater, so for our groundwater aquifer. When the water doesn't slow down, of course, it runs off the land and goes to the Gulf of Mexico. So it's important for groundwater as well.
It's an important work restoring these wetlands and putting more grass on the ground, because as a hunter like me that just got really excited about that pheasant over there, I appreciate seeing this work. So I'm going to end this interview right now before sunset because I'm going to go chase that pheasant. So right. Bruce, thank you very much.
Thank you. Good talking with you.
Fire is the most efficient way to restore prairies, wetlands, and oak savannas. But as Bruce said, burns are only possible when conditions are right. So you have to get the drip torch out and burn wherever and whenever you can. To meet the high demand for burns, the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources hires crews from the nonprofit Conservation Corps, which engages young people in outdoor service and job training. In late September, Molly Tranel Nelson, who manages DNR Natural Resources in southern Minnesota, invited us on a prescribed burn with Conservation Corps burn boss Doug Ekstrom and his crew of 5. When we arrive, the crew is preparing to set fire to 14 acres in a bison enclosure at Minneopa State Park near Mankato. The park includes original remnant prairie, where sumac has taken over after 20 years of no burns. It was also thick with brome, an exotic grass with a thick duff layer that pheasant chicks can't run through. By burning that litter layer, it will open up travel paths for young birds to feed on insects and seeds. Fire has restored prairies for thousands of years, set by lightning or Native Americans. When European settlers arrived and put out the fires, invasive species gradually took hold.
Historically, prairie fire was a normal occurrence, so we're reenacting nature, so to speak. The goal is to restore a prairie site, maybe reduce some of the native species that are invading. It also helps rejuvenate some of the native plant species that are in the area and returns nutrients to the soil. So we have some different grasses here, this little blue stem. You know, some of this is, you just, to the touch, it feels like it's drying, almost a paper texture to it. So ideally a good burn will burn, of course, these standing fuels down to the duff and burn down to the black dirt. We had to wait a time today for the conditions to get right. It's been a real wet summer and early fall here, so the ground is still pretty saturated. So ideally when we come back after the burn, we'll be able to kick the ash and see that there's no remaining duff and it's a complete burn all the way to the ground. Typically, we're very cognizant of weather forecasts. We watch that 2 to 3 days in advance so we know when conditions may be right. We consider everything from wind direction, wind speed, relative humidity, forecasts. Typically, if the weather's going to change dramatically or if there's, of course, rain or overcast conditions, we try and target a prescription temperature-wise and relative humidity-wise, wind speed, those types of things are what we consider.
Every fire must be supervised by a burn boss who goes through extensive training. Crew members also receive specialized training and complete a week-long course, including a physical test, and are red card certified to burn.
We work with the Conservation Corps crews quite a bit, and since they're young, strapping people, we put bladder bags on them, which are just backpacks full of water. And there's a hose at the end that has a special nozzle so that it uses a small amount of water at a high velocity. So if you think about if you have to haul your own water in, you don't want to use a lot of water on a fire, but you want to put that fire out with a lot of pressure.
Fire is dangerous, and only Doug, Molly, and experienced crew member Casey carry torches.
We have what's called a drip torch. It's a combination of diesel fuel and gasoline. Gasoline, of course, is the igniter and the diesel fuel is the carrier. It's a mixture of about 2/3 diesel to 1/3 gasoline. Basically drips the fuel from the torch, has a wick on the end to keep the torch ignited, drops fuel on the ground and lays the fire line.
Doug and Molly ignite fire on each side of the burn strip, and Casey drips fuel on brush that doesn't ignite as easily as dry grass. Molly is on the downwind side, so she first burns a black line, a burned strip that contains the fire. A utility vehicle with a water pump and hose runs along the side of the black line to make sure the fire is contained. Crews also use a flapper, basically a rubber piece on a broom handle to smother fire on the edges. Doug and Molly communicate via two-way radios throughout the burn to make sure the fire is controlled and conditions are safe.
My role as burn boss is to be cognizant of what's going on both sides, what conditions are, how volatile is the fire, have wind directions changed or wind speed changed that we need to consider as far as placing crew members.
This is Molly. Casey sent a strip around these oak trees so we wouldn't burn through them and get to the sunny side where the fire went better. Doug, this is Molly. We're moving again now.
Copy that.
It is burning really hot over here.
Do you have enough bodies? I could send Sam over if you need an extra body.
We're good now that we're using the wet line. We were getting some head fire on the line, but now the wind's shifting back.
Copy that.
Because of recent rains, a few patches of thick brome are not taking to the fire, but the little blue stem burns hot. The warm season grass is a good fuel because it evolved as a fire-dependent species. Its root systems plunge to 8 or 9 foot depths, so while the grass we see above ground burns away, the roots underneath are getting stronger and green shoots will appear early next spring. The restored habitat will not only be ideal for pheasants, rare Henslow sparrows, loggerhead shrikes, and upland sandpipers are coming back to the prairie.
Next year I expect this to look gorgeous with little blue stem, and a lot of the prairie forbs require fire and they'll really bloom great that next year afterwards. So it should look really nice next year, especially if we set back some of the sumac.
Mission accomplished. Molly and Doug met their goal of reducing about 80% of the litter layer and setting back the Sue bag. Every time they burn the patch again, ideally every 3 to 5 years, it should burn a little better.
You asked and we listened. I'm Amanda Anderson, Digital Media Specialist for Prairie Sportsman. The Q&A section of each episode is powered by questions from Prairie Sportsman viewers. Our first question from Twitter is there a natural predator for zebra mussels? We asked the Aquatic Invasive Species Coordinator for Kandiyohi County, Stephanie Felt. She replied, the round goby, introduced through ballast water in the Great Lakes, is a natural predator. It's also an invasive species. They generally avoid the largest mussel shells and can't effectively feed on mussels that grow between rocks, but they can reduce zebra mussel numbers to some extent. While a few ducks and freshwater fish will eat round gobies, they spread quickly and have negative effects on other native species, making them an ineffective way to control zebra mussels. Our second question was emailed asking, when I grew up in South Dakota, tree claims held wildlife. Why do Pheasant Forever and the DNR have to cut down any tree they find? Anthony Hauk, Pheasants Forever Director of Public Relations, took a stab at this one. He said, generally speaking, trees and pheasants aren't a great mix. Trees serve as predator perches for raptors like hawks and as havens for nest raiders like raccoons and skunks. What's more important is what the trees are replaced with. Typically, a shelter belt more suitable for pheasants and other wildlife, or further enhancement to restore the area to grassland. The tree cutting is immediate and sticks in people's mind, but visit that area in a couple years and you may be surprised how well wildlife respond. Thanks for asking.
Thank you for tuning in to Prairie Sportsman. Keep those questions and comments coming in, and be sure to get outdoors this week.
Funding for this project was provided by the Minnesota Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund, as recommended by the Legislative Citizen Commission on Minnesota Resources, and by American Surplus, Ice Castle Fish House RV, Minnesota's largest manufacturer of premium portable ice fish houses, and a proud supporter of the annual February Ice Castle Classic Fishing Tournament. More information at icecastlefh.com. And by Live Wide Open, a regional movement that encourages people to make a great life for themselves in West Central Minnesota. More at livewideopen.com.